rural areas compared to urban areas. Whereas, you know, cervical cancer occurs, as you patients who are promiscuous and have multiple sexual partners. There's no hygiene. So in rural areas, what happens? Not use barrier contraceptives as much as people do in urban areas. So not using barrier contraceptives, not getting vaccinated against human papilloma virus infection, thereby reducing cervical cancer incidence. So these factors are not present in the rural areas, and hence cervical cancer than breast cancer in the rural areas. So this bit you have to know about cancer epidemiology. Next we move on to the anatomy of the breast. So anatomy of the breast, when we come to the microscopic structure, the breast is a composite of small units, globular units. Several terminal duct globular units uh, comprise one breast. You know, first of all, they form certain lobes, and all the lobes together. The breast is a racemose organ. Racemose means it's like a branch of grapes, where it is like a bunch of grapes, where you can see that each terminal duct lobular unit is like a grape, and they are connected by small, stems to form a bunch, which will be called uh, a lobe. A lobe. Such lobes will form one mammary gland. This is the ductal structure which I had shown in the last class also. Area which is marked with blue. The ducts are disposed like this from the nipple into the breast parenchyma, and in extreme is fibrofatty tissue, and this which is blackish, darker in color with heterogenic appearance of the heterogeneous ducts, that this portion comprises the ductolobular tissue of the breast, whereas the whitish portion is fat and subcutaneous. And all the cancer mostly arises from this duct and lobular portion, and not from the fat or supporting tissue. So coming to carcinogenesis, there are various theories of carcinogenesis progression theory, in which there is gradual uh, progression uh, from a single cell to a damaged cell, and then the damaged cell uh, progresses to form cancer. Whereas if there is apoptosis, the damaged cell is eliminated. Then there is theory in which this there are stem cells which uh, can divide and differentiate into any form, any cell, and they give rise to the. There is one fetal stem cell theory in which they say that several cells develop certain markers. Some of them remain dormant and some of them proliferate into cancer. Multi-step carcinogenesis is the one in which they state that first there is aplasia, then metaplasia, then carcinoma in situ, and then finally cancer. Then there's this Fisher's concept and the Halstadian concept. In Fisher's concept, they say that the breast cancer is systemic in nature. There are circulating tumor cells in the blood. There are small micrometastases elsewhere, as well as, the primary tumor in the breast, and all at the same time. Whereas Halstadian concept is that first breast tumor develops, then it increases in size, then it spreads to the axillary lymph nodes, and then finally it spreads to the rest of the body. So a sequential manner of development and spread. However, both Fisher's concept and Halstadian concept seem to be utopian and too ideal. And actually, what we suppose is that there is something like a middle. Fisher's concept is also true, but a tumor which is less than 1 centimeter will not have distant metastasis. They say that a tumor which is more than 1 centimeter will throw up metastasis, and it is not necessary that tumor has to go to axillary nodes first and then to distant sites. There may be distant metastasis also in absence of axillary nodes. So which is kind of a middle path between Fisher's concept and Holz's concept, actually pathogenesis of breast cancer and metastasis arising out of it. So this diagram shows how the cancer may gradually progress in multi-step carcinogenesis. First, there is normal duct lined by a single layer of ductal epithelium. When there is increase in number and size to 2 layers, 2 to 3 layers, then you call it as intraductal hyperplasia. Hyperplasia could be typical hyperplasia, or it could be florid hyperplasia. It could be moderate, mild, depending on the number of layers of cells, that is extra layer of cells that is formed due to proliferation. Then finally, if there are atypical cells and percent of the duct is obliterated, then we say there are these are atypical ductal hyperplasia. When this hyperplasia obliterates the ducts, more than 2 ducts, 2 contiguous ducts, or the focus of atypical ductal hyperplasia is more than 2 millimeter in size, then you say there is ductal carcinoma in situ. And when ductal carcinoma in situ invades the basement membrane of the duct, then we say that invasive carcinoma has occurred. Steps of carcinogenesis. One is self-sufficiency of growth signals. The cells develop into cancer when there is neoplasia, when there is disordered, excessive growth of cells. So for disordered and excessive growth of cells, what is required? First of all, there should be enough growth signals so that the cells get an impetus to grow endlessly. Then limitless replication potential. How? By evasion of apoptosis, by dysregulation of cell cycle. Cell cycle, all of us know that active phase, one inactive phase, the cells go through a synthetic phase, and one resting phase, G phase, S phase, like that we know. So when there is dysregulation, then what happens is the cell remains in mitotic phase most of the time and it does not go into resting phase. Then cells multiply several times. What happens is there is loss of telomeres, and this give a signal that this cell has become old and senescent and it will not divide further. However, malignant cells develop a power to maintain their length of telomeres, which are at one end, and the signal that goes out is, because they are maintaining their telomeric length, the signal that goes out is that this cell is not senescent. In spite of repeated division, they do not lose their ability to divide, and hence dividing again and again, thereby giving rise to cancer or neoplasia. Then there is neoangiogenesis and development of metastasis. Metastasis occurs again when the cell has divided a certain number of times and then it breaks off. There is development of tissue. There is breakdown of matrix metalloproteinases. There is transmigration of through the basement membrane, and finally they go into the blood vessels and then spread and go and get deposited tissue, which is ideal for them to get lodged. So this is called the seed and soil theory. So there are other things like immune editing, and there are certain markers like PD1, PDL1, which PD1 is programmed death 1, programmed death ligand 1. Then there are certain CTLA4, CD4, CD8. So what happens is the normal body, what happens is they eliminate the tumor cells by healthy immunity. However, when there is loss of that equilibrium, what happens? The tumor cells escape the immune system, and when they escape the immune system, they grow endless, increasing burden. Then there is alteration of cellular energetics, which is called Werber effect. The utilization of the levoglucose by tumor cells is one such example, which leads to their immense potential to divide and spread. So this is the diagrammatic representation of how metacells. Already told you in brief. You can refer to this diagram, but it is not very important for you. Now coming to classification, the WHO classifies on pathological basis, histopathological basis into not otherwise specified or invasive ductal carcinoma, then invasive lobular carcinoma, then medullary, papillary, adenoid, cystic, neuroendocrine, apocrine, and so these are the various pathological variations of breast cancer. Each variety is not required at your level. The newer classification of breast cancer is called molecular classification of breast cancer, and it is on histochemical markers. So luminal A type of breast cancer is ER positive, estrogen receptor positive, progesterone receptor positive, and they are generally slow growing. Luminal B is also hormone receptor positive. However, they may be HER2 positive, and if they're HER2 negative, they have increased Ki67 levels. So it is either hormone positive, HER2 positive, or hormone positive, HER2 negative with increased Ki67 levels, which means that they are not very slow growing and are rather rapid. Then we have basal-like negative, which are negative and they are most aggressive in nature. Then one variety is there where the tumors are ER negative, PR negative, but HER2 positive. That is called HER2 rich variety. They are also very aggressive. Then there's one variety which is normal like. This is most probably a histopathological mistake. That is, when you have taken biopsy, you have not taken biopsy from the tumor part and you have probably taken biopsy from breast tissue. However, normal breast tissue, but you have taken sample from an area which has predominantly normal breast tissue and little bit of tumor tissue. So when it is assessed for hormone receptor positivity or HER2 receptor positivity, it appears like the immunohistochemical pattern appears like a normal breast distribution, normal like. Then there is another mark called claudine, especially negative cancers are further classified as claudine low or claudine rich variety, and the claudine low varieties of triple negative cancers have a poor prognosis. In India, triple negative breast cancer occurs about 29 to 46% in 29 to 46% cases. In the West, triple negative cancers are much less. In India, since triple negative is more, we also see a preponderance of cancer in the younger population is more affected by TNBC than older population. So triple negative breast cancer is a separate entity altogether because it is more aggressive in nature and it has some peculiarities. So etiology, this is the epidemiology of TNBC as far as India is concerned. See, most of the other cancer centimeter in whereas TNBCs are only 20% of them are less than 5 centimeter in size. Most of them are more than 5 centimeter in size. The average age of TNBC is less than other cancers. Locally advanced breast cancers are comparable with other cancers. Early breast cancers are much low in TNBC compared to others because in TNBC you will find more of metastatic ones because they will present in a metastatic stage. Recurrence is more common in TNBC patients, whereas others show very low. And recurrence is, I think this should be no recurrence is less in TNBC patients and more in patients. So you can see that TNBC for recurrence, for metastasis, for large size tumors, and occurs at. So TNBC can come as a short note for you. TNBC is also associated with BRCA1 mutation, and in TNBC therapy, adjuvant therapy has to be done with hormones, with chemotherapy. There is not much option for even molecular targeted therapy, but nowadays certain drugs like olaparib have been studied positive triple negative cancer in the metastatic setting, and in the Olympia 2 trial it was seen and to be effective. And now olaparib, which is also called PARP inhibitors, they are being used in BRCA positive triple negative cancers in the metastatic setting. It is being used in the adjuvant setting as well. Coming to risk factor, getting older is a risk factor for breast cancer. Higher chance of breast cancer, then genetic mutations like BRCA2, leaf-from-any, that is P53 mutation, and Cowden's mutation. Cowden's syndrome occurs due to a mutation due to a P10 mutation occurring in chromosome 10. Leaf-from-any occurs due to P53 mutation. It occurs in chromosome 17. BRCA1 again mutation in chromosome 17. BRCA2 mutation in chromosome 13. Reproductive history, early menstrual periods, late menopause are high risk factors. Indicate higher risk factors. Dense breasts, if somebody has dense breasts on radiology, like on mammography, is a high risk candidate for breast cancer. If there's personal history of breast cancer or certain non-cancerous breast diseases, if somebody has a breast cancer in the right breast, she is a high risk candidate for developing left breast. And certain non-cancerous breast diseases like atypical ductal hyperplasia, lobular carcinoma in situ, atypical lobular hyperplasia, and even certain proliferative lesions without atypia, especially when there is breast cancer, increase the chances of breast cancer. Then previous treatment using radiation therapy. I think I discussed all these things in the last class also. Then the above, we can do risk assessment and genetic testing suspected to be carriers of genetic mutations, and then we can do risk reduction by bilateral mastectomy plus minus bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy depending on the age of the patient, and we could use tamoxifen prophylaxis, which is also called chemo prevention for breast cancer. There was this STAR trial, then there was NSCBP 13. Several trials were there. The IBIS trial, which established this hormone therapy as a chemo preventive measure for preventing occurrence of breast cancer. Now, risk factors which you can change or modify the risk factor, not being the risk factor is not being physically active, so you ask the patient to be physically active to avoid breast cancer. Overweight or obese, especially after menopause, or weight gain during later part of your age. A girl who is obese from childhood, she does not have much risk factor for developing breast cancer after attaining menopause. But someone who was thinner, became obese after childbearing, and continues to be obese till after menopause, she has higher risk factor for developing breast cancer. Then hormone replacement therapy and some OCPs are a high risk factor for breast cancer. Taking those is how, by avoiding to take hormone replacement therapy, one can reduce the incidence of breast cancer. Those who have no children or who delay their pregnancy after 30 years, if they can avoid that, if they could have children early before 30 years of age, it's possible for them to have that. But you cannot force someone to do that. Then you must encourage ladies to do breastfeeding if they have children. Avoid alcohol, smoking, and night shifts, and exposure to certain chemicals like plastic, etc. So, they are saying you do not plastic. We have a tendency to get things from Swiggy or Zomato, heat them in the microwave, and have them straight away from plastic containers nowadays. They're asking eating from plastic containers and plastic glasses, plastic bottles. Though this risk factor is not accepted by all of literature that is available, but still touted as one of the important risk factors. Then prevent all this, you educate and spread awareness, and by doing so, if we can do early diagnosis and treatment, there is higher chances of saving lives and saving the breasts, because earlier the breast cancer presents, higher the chance of being able to conserve the breast. Otherwise, you have to do mastectomy, remove the psychologically taxing for a patient. Now, coming to clinical presentation, lump in breast, generally painless, but it may cause there. Some may present only with asymmetry, some may present with non-healing ulcer on the breast, lump in the axilla or neck. Some may present with nipple discharge, especially serosanguinous, spontaneous, and from a single duct. There could be nipple retraction or destruction of nipple occurs in an entity called Paget's disease of breast, or the breast may develop an orange peel appearance, which is also called Podrange. Coming to screening and diagnosis, there are three pillars to. One is clinical examination. Next is imaging, either ultrasound, mammography, or MRI, and then finally pathology, either FNAC or. I've already told that nowadays forecut preferred over fine needle aspiration, and why core needle is preferred over fine needle aspiration cytology. This also I've told in the previous class. Now everybody do not have access to doctors for clinical examination. So for those, what do we say for screening? Any girl who is beyond 20 years of age should examine her breasts by herself once a month, 7 to 10 days after menstrual cycle is over. They should go to the bath, moisten their fingers with soap and water, and breast themselves. If they there's some lump somewhere, they should contact the nearest ASHA worker or health worker or a doctor, and then the doctor does a clinical examination and does imaging and biopsy if needed. Now coming to staging, TX must know that we follow the TNM staging, which was propounded by Fisher for all cancers. Now American Joint HSCC 8th edition TNM staging is in place. So staging could be either clinical or pathological. Clinical staging is based on clinical examination and radiological investigation, whereas pathological staging is done on the post-operative specimen. The operative specimen that you have taken out is subjected to pathological staging, whereas you rely on clinical staging, which is by clinical examination, by imaging. So T0, TX is when primary tumor cannot be assessed. Suppose a patient has undergone surgery somewhere else, and you don't know what exactly the tumor size was or what was the condition of the skin and all. So that will be called TX. T0 is no evidence of cancer, and this is clinical staging. Clinical staging is represented with a C as a prefix. So you will write that TNM. Okay. So TIS is carcinoma in situ. DCIS, LCIS has been removed from the current agent, and it is considered as a pre-malignant lesion, but it is not the staging of cancer. Then TIS Paget's, when there is Paget's disease of the nipple leading to destruction of the nipple without any lump, then you call it as TIS Paget's. There is a focus of invasive carcinoma associated with Paget. Then you do the TNM classification according to the lump, according to the size and characteristics of the lump. Then you don't say it is TIS Paget's, you then classify it as T1, T2, T3, T4 depending on its characteristics. So T1, which is less than equal to 20 millimeter or 2 centimeter in greatest dimension, they are further classified MI or microscopic. Less than, if they are less than or equal to 1 millimeter in the greatest dimension. T1 is more, T1A is more than 1 millimeter but less than equal to 5 millimeter. T1B is more than 5 millimeter but less than equal to 1 centimeter. T1C is more than 1 centimeter but less than equal to 2 centimeter. T2 is more than 2 centimeter but less than equal to 5 centimeter. T3 is more than 5. T4 is further classified as T4A when there is extension to the chest wall. However, if only to the pectoral is measured, we do not say that it is a chest wall. It is considered as not fixed to the chest wall. If it is fixed only to the, then T4B is involvement of the skin, ulceration or satellite nodules or edema, which do not meet the criteria for inflammatory carcinoma. So edema, redness, etc., which involves more than 1/3 of the breast is called inflammatory carcinoma or T4D. If the redness or edema is less than 1/3 of, occupies less than 1/3 of the breast, then we say it is not inflammatory carcinoma but just mere skin involvement, and then we stage it as T4B. However, if redness or edema, etc., more than 1/3 of the breast, then we say it is inflammatory carcinoma, and then we stage it as T4D. If there is involvement of both chest wall and skin, then we say it is T4C. Now coming to nodal staging, N1 is ipsilateral mobile level 1, level 2 axillary nodes. N2A is when ipsilateral level 1 or 2 axillary lymph nodes which are next to one another are present. Or N2B, internal mammary nodes which are detected by imaging, CT scan or mammography, in absence of any axillary lymph node. Now N3 of infraclavicular nodes or level 3 nodes. T is internal mammary nodes with axillary lymph nodes. If both are present, then it is 3B, and N3C is supraclavicular lymph nodes, presence of supraclavicular lymph nodes. Now pathological T staging is almost the same as clinical T staging. However, pathological nodal staging is a bit different from clinical nodal staging, and pathological nodal staging actually the number of nodes involved. Like, if only axillary nodes are taken into consideration, then if up to 3 nodes are involved, then it is called PN1. If 4 to 9, PN2. If 10 or more, it is PN3. And if there is pathological evidence of supraclavicular lymph node, it will be called PN3C. If there is pathological presence of ipsilateral mammary nodes as well as more than 3 axillary lymph nodes and in internal mammary nodes, then you will call it N3B. So various permutation and combination of pathologically proved axillary and internal mammary nodes or supraclavicular nodes, and the number of axillary nodes that are in consideration to classify the lymph nodes pathologically after the lymph nodes have been removed by surgery. Now, if lymph node biopsy, then PN1 brackets SN means it is PN1 by sentinel lymph node biopsy. Okay. There are certain things called isolated tumor cells, microscopic metastatic axillary lymph nodes, or macroscopic lymph nodes in the axilla. So, what do we mean by isolated tumor cells? When less than 200 cells are there. When malignant cells are, the focus is less than 0.2 millimeter, PN0I plus or microscopic positive. Then, if it is PN1 MI, that means the tumor focus is more, but not more than 2 millimeter, and there should not be more than 200 cells. So that will be called axillary node is micropositive, micrometastasis is positive. And if the focus of axilla is more than 2 millimeter, only then it is called macroscopic metastasis in the axilla or in the lymph nodes, and then they are classified as PN1, PN1B, like what. So this pathological staging is not very important for you people. And then finally, the combined stage 1A means T1, N0, M0, stage 1B is T0, N1, M0. 1B is both N0, N1, M0 and T1, N1, M0. T2A is T0, N1, M0. So like this, you categorize the T, N, M together, and then you subclassify them as stage 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B like this. And stage 1, 2A breast cancer, stage 3A and 3B advanced breast cancer, and stage 4 is called metastatic breast cancer. So stage 4 metastatic breast cancer has some metastasis somewhere. Locally advanced breast cancer, either the tumor is more than 5 centimeter or involves the skin, that is, it is either 3, along with bulky liver metastasis, bulky axillary lymph node metastasis. However, a T3 tumor axillary node is classified as stage 2B. You can see T3N0 is classified as stage 2B. Is classified as early breast cancer. What do we have? We either have T1 tumor with N0 or T0 tumor with N1 axillary node, or T1 tumor with N1 axillary node, or T0 tumor with N1 axillary node, or T1 axillary node with T1 tumor with N1 axillary node, T2 tumor with N0 axillary node, T2 tumor with N1 axillary node, and T3 with N0. However, when T1 or T2 tumors are associated with N2, matlab bulky or fixed axillary lymph nodes, then they are classified as locally advanced. Again, T3 tumor with N1 disease or N2 disease will be considered as locally advanced breast cancer, and T4 tumors with axillary lymph node metastasis, however, in absence of metastasis, distant metastasis, will be considered as local. So, locally advanced breast cancers are those with skin or chest wall involvement or tumors more than 5 centimeter with axillary lymph node involvement. However, if a tumor is without chest wall or skin involvement and no axillary nodes, that will still be considered as early breast cancer, and sometimes it is also called large operable breast cancer. So that is LOBC. Okay. So this is important for you to understand what is early breast cancer, what is locally advanced breast cancer, and what is metastatic breast cancer. Now coming to metastatic staging M0 and M1. Clinically, a patient may be CM0 or CM1 if symptoms are present. However, if the patient, the patient is pain and you are seeing that there is metastasis in the bone and you're confirming it with pathological diagnosis like histopathology or bone marrow biopsy is showing that there is that bone. So it will become PM1, that is pathological M1. So metastasis, it becomes CM1. However, if you test with a pathological test and you see that there is presence of metastasis, it becomes PM1. However, since the patient has clinical metastasis on pathological diagnosis, there is no metastasis detected by pathological test, then you cannot CM0, but you will call it as CM1. So CM1, if proved by pathology, will become PM1. If cannot be proved by pathology, still it will remain CM1 and will not be classified as PM0. This has to be kept in mind. So this we have discussed, I think. Coming to management, early breast cancer, what is it? We have already told you, T1 or T2 tumor with either negative axillary lymph nodes or N1 axillary lymph nodes will be considered as early breast cancer. Also T3 tumor with N0 axillary node will be considered. All other tumors, T3, N1 onwards, T2 with N2 disease or N3 disease will be considered as locally advanced breast cancer. So in early breast cancer, what are the treatment options? For the breast, you can either do a breast conservation therapy in the form of lumpectomy or quadrantectomy or tumorectomy, along with oncoplastic surgery for giving the breast a good osmosis, or you can do a simple. So that is for the breast per se. If the axillary lymph node status is clinically negative, then lymph node biopsy. However, if on palpation axillary lymph node is positive, you go for USG guided biopsy or FNAC. Or if on USG guided biopsy or FNAC, hello class, you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. If on USG guided biopsy axilla is found to be negative, suppose clinically there is a lymph node which is palpable. You do USG guided biopsy and FNAC from the axillary node and it turns out to be negative. then you will consider the axilla as negative, and in that case also you can do biopsy. However, if USG guided FNAC or biopsy comes out to be positive, you will treat that patient as axilla, clinically positive axilla, and you will have to do axilla. There are certain randomized controlled trials which have been, done to finally come to a conclusion what is ideal treatment for breast cancer, like NSBP 0406 for lumpectomy. Then there is this NSBP 32 and Almanac trial for sentinel lymph node biopsy. We are not going into the details of those trials. For locally advanced breast cancer, again we are told that T3N1, T3N2, T4N0, T4N1, T4N2, T4N3, or T1N2, T2N2, T0N2, all of them will be considered as cancer, and you have to give neoadjuvant chemotherapy to downsize the tumor or downstage the tumor. And then finally, when the tumor becomes smaller, you can go for, if you can do breast conservation, well and good. If even after giving chemotherapy, any chemotherapy which is given prior to surgery is called neoadjuvant therapy. If even after giving neoadjuvant therapy you cannot do breast conservation, however, a patient who had presented with T4 tumor at the very beginning, in those patients it is not as advisable to, and presented at the tumors, you should not try to do sentinel lymph node biopsy even if the axilla was clinically negative. In those patients, you have to do ALND even if axilla was negative. And up to T3 tumors, however, if after, you can consider sentinel lymph node biopsy if after neoadjuvant therapy axilla becomes negative. So that is, these are all technical things. For your level, you must know that we must give neoadjuvant chemotherapy for locally advanced breast cancer. After neoadjuvant chemotherapy, if the tumor becomes such that breast conservation is possible, we will still do surgery. If it is not possible, and for axilla with disease, high disease burden in the during presentation, we will go for axillary lymph node dissection. However, if axilla was negative in the outset, we may consider sentinel lymph node biopsy. Again, there are some important trials like NSBP 1827, which established therapy, neoadjuvant chemotherapy. You increase the breast conservation. However, affect the overall survival. Even if you do not give neoadjuvant chemotherapy, the overall survival remains the same. So if there is a patient who has multicentric disease, or asking for undergoing mastectomy, conservation চাই না, আমি mastectomy করাতে চাই. So in that way, aiming for breast conservation, you may not give neoadjuvant chemotherapy and straight away go for surgery, because overall survival is not increased by giving. Now, in this respect, I would like to tell you what is multicentric disease. A breast with multiple tumors from each other by more than 4 centimeters will be called multicentric disease. If there are multiple tumors which are less than 4 centimeters apart from each other, then you call it a disease. Now, for metastatic breast cancer, you cannot surgery. You may have to do palliative mastectomy only if there is fungation, bleeding, or there is growth of maggot, smelling bad, it is bleeding, then you may have to do a palliative mastectomy. You may give palliative chemotherapy if the patient is hormone, you can give hormone therapy. If the patient is HER2 positive, then you can do targeted therapy. Nowadays, several targeted therapies for even hormone positive tumors have also come out, like ribociclib, palbociclib. Those things are there. Now, for early breast cancer and locally advanced breast cancer, both adjuvant setting, you may give chemotherapy, therapy, and hormone therapy depending on factors. Like in early breast cancer, if you do BCS, you have to give radiotherapy. If there is more than if there is axillary lymph node positive, you have to give radiotherapy. If the tumor is more than 5 centimeters, you have to give radiotherapy. Okay. And in locally advanced breast cancer, if the tumor is more than 5 centimeters, there is skin involvement, you have to give radiotherapy even if you are doing mastectomy. And if there is axillary activity, you have to do radiotherapy. Chemotherapy, you have to tumors are more than 1 centimeter if axillary node is positive. Now, however, in hormone positive tumors, in 1 to 3 centimeter, if axillary nodes are not positive, then you may give only hormone therapy without giving chemotherapy. There are certain genetic tests like OncoType DX, which could be used to identify those patients who will not benefit from chemotherapy. Among this subset of patients who are hormone positive uh, patients like ERPR positive axilla and the primary tumor between 1 to 3 centimeter. And in all patients who have less than 1 centimeter tumor, be it hormone positive or negative, you may avoid chemotherapy. But if is positive, then you should give chemotherapy. Nowadays, several studies are underway in which they are studying that between 1 to 3 axillary lymph nodes positivity can be avoided, but those results are not out yet. So for all practical purposes, you will say that whenever axillary lymph node is positive, we have to go for adjuvant chemotherapy. And if hormone receptor is positive, we will have to give hormone therapy. If hormone receptor is positive, we have to give trastuzumab as targeted therapy. The common breast operations. Yes, either you do mastectomy, you can do a conventional mastectomy, skin sparing mastectomy, or a skin and nipple sparing mastectomy, or you can do lumpectomy, wide local excision, quadrantectomy. Several names are there. But whenever you are doing breast conservation surgery, you must give radiotherapy to the breast. Among the surgeries on axilla, you have sentinel lymph node biopsy, axillary lymph node dissection, or axillary. Now, in lumpectomy, you can see you are removing the lump surgically, and in mastectomy, you are removing the breast. When mastectomy plus axillary lymph node dissection are done together in a patient, it is called modified radical mastectomy. Previously, pectoralis major minor along with mastectomy, and that used to be called radical mastectomy. Nowadays, we don't do radical mastectomy, we do modified. Now, coming to mastectomy, when should we do mastectomy? If the patient desires that she needs mastectomy, she is not satisfied with BCS, she is anxious. The remnant breast that will be there after BCS may develop cancer. If the patient is wary of such possibility, then she may desire to undergo a mastectomy. Then tumors which are very big, especially if the breast size is small, and after removing the tumor only remain. In those cases, you have to do a mastectomy. Because after BCS, if you do not have a meaningful breast mount, there is no point of doing BCS. If DCIS, if there is multicentric cancer, as I've already told you, then there are certain contraindications to BCT, like a patient who does not have access to radiation therapy, because in BCT you must do radiation therapy. So if a patient does not have access to radiotherapy, you can't treat the patient. Then there are certain connective tissue disorders again, should be patients having those connective tissue disorders should not be subjected to BCS, because again radiotherapy is contraindicated in them and there would be various complications. And T4 tumors, I've already told you, should not be offered BCS or SLNB. So these are the steps to make the patient supine, abduction of skin with or chlorhexidine, wrap the arms separately so that unsterile parts are completely covered. Then you mark the lung position and size, site and side of tumor, and then you operate. The position of the surgeon and first assistant can be seen. The surgeon stands on the side of the tumor, the assistant stands on the side of the tumor, but towards the head end of the abducted arm. Then you make the skin the transverse or oblique ellipse, which is also called modified steward incision, encompassing 2 centimeters of skin around the lesion, incorporating the nipple complex and any biopsy scar that is there on the breast. And several kinds of steward incisions, transverse ellipse, transverse ellipse. That ellipse could be, either tilted inwards or tilted outwards. And there are other incisions, like the Rodman's vertical incision, classic or Gray's and Greenhouse incision, but these are not used nowadays because you have to radiate the entire mastectomy scar. The bigger the scar, bigger becomes the radiation field, and more are the deleterious effects of radiation on the lungs and heart and other structures around, other surrounding structures. So you try to keep the incision smaller and within the boundaries of the breast tissue. So this is another which is called fish tail incision or fish incision. The tail end is placed at the lateral mammary crease. The head and body of the fish incorporate skin around the tumor margin along with the NSE nipple areola complex. This helps in reducing dog ears and increases the exposure for axillary dissection. The flaps, upper flap is raised up to the second rib because breast is located up to the second rib. You will find that upper flap is raised up to the clavicle till the subclavius muscle is seen. That is also true, especially in patients who are not naive. In them, breast may extend up to the upper, like up to the clavicle. But however, most of the patients, breast or young patients, nulliparous is the flap up to second rib. That is not. It is not how it is written in your books. Lower flap has to be lower limits of the breast or inferior mammary crease or up to the upper border of the transversus abdominis muscle. Medially, you should stop at the lateral border of the sternum. Laterally, you should expose the latissimus dorsi muscle. The thickness of the flap should be either, neither too thin nor too thick. So around 5 to 6 millimeter could be enough. Nowadays, they say that there's something called the premammary fascia, and you should remove at the level of premammary fascia, raise the flaps. And then after you have raised the flaps, you remove underlying pectoralis major along with the pectoralis fascia. Sometimes if the pectoralis muscle is invaded, you can remove the pectoralis major muscle also. In the medial aspect, 4 to 6 perforator vessels from the internal thoracic or internal mammary artery are encountered of those vessels. Axillary tail must also be removed with the breast. Hemostasis, wash, mop and instrument counts, you place a suction grade, and sometimes you tack the flaps in which the flap is sutured to the underlying muscle, and then you do skin closure. When you are doing modified radical mastectomy, after you have done mastectomy, you have to enter the axilla and do axillary lymph node dissection. We will come to axillary lymph node dissection later. So this is after orient the specimen with a suture at the superior end, a short end and a long suture at the lateral end. That is called short superior and long lateral orientation. Coming to complications, hemorrhage, hematoma, infection, seroma, flap necrosis, wound dehiscence. If margin is positive, you either go for or radiation. That is another indication of radiation after mastectomy. Apart from the indications I've already told. If there is dog ear, for dog ear correction. The ideal mastectomy scar should look like this. There should not be any redundant skin. The chest should be flat. The scar should not cross onto the sternum. The scar should not cross beyond anterior axillary to prevent widening of the field of radiation, because the longer the scar, the bigger the area to be irradiated. Then there are other types of mastectomies, as I've already told you. I'm not going into the details of this. Undergone a skin and nipple sparing mastectomy by a lateral mammary crease incision and an implant has been put in. You can see that entire breast has been removed from within, but you cannot appreciate that it has been done like that. So you can, the patient is very much pleased because this is a cosmetically pleasing operation for the patient. These are again patients mastectomy to a lateral mammary crease incision with preservation of nipple and areola and placement of. Coming to axillary lymph node dissection, if you are is present or suspicious node on mammography plus USG, then USG guided FNAC or biopsy should be done. If positive, you do LNK as a palpable node is present and it is negative on USG guided FNAC or core biopsy, you go for SLNB. If SLNB is positive, then you go for LNB. If SLNB is negative, you do not do anything. If no palpable nodes are there, then you go directly for SLNB. If positive, you do LND. So these are the indications of LND. If T4 tumor is there, then you do not do SLND, go directly for LND. In local, if pre-chemo SLND was negative, USG guided biopsy, SLNB was positive, or post chemo USG guided biopsy is positive, or pre-chemo USG guided biopsy LND. In LABC, pre-chemo axilla was negative on imaging. Sentinel lymph node was done prior to chemotherapy, and then you can, or pre-op axillary biopsy was negative, you can go for post chemo SLNB again, and if that SLNB is positive, if the post chemo SLNB is still negative in a patient who was pre-chemo period, then you may just avoid doing LND. Now, it may be done as a part of modified radical mastectomy. With mastectomy, as I told you, mastectomy plus LND would be called modified radical mastectomy. It may be done in conjunction with BCS, is BCS plus LND or BCS and LND being done together. This could be done through same or separate position of the breast tumor, and it may be done as a standalone procedure in a patient who has undergone SLNB, mastectomy and SLNB in the previously, and now she has developed an axillary recurrence. So you may be doing dissection in such a patient. So what are the levels of axillary lymph nodes? Level 1, that is lateral to the pectoralis minor, to the pectoralis minor, you call level 2, and medial to the pectoralis 3. Now after the breast has been removed, you enter the axilla by tracing the axillary tail, the axillary fascia, and you enter the axilla. You take care of certain structures like the long thoracic nerve, the group of structures, medial pectoral nerve, and which supplies the medial the pectoral muscles, and then you have to remove the Rotter's node in between the pectoralis major and minor to identify the axillary vein and remove all fibrofatty tissue, inferior and medial to the axillary vein by going in a medial to lateral direction. However, you have to protect the long thoracic nerve and thoracodorsal pedicle. You have to protect the intercostobrachial nerve, which is of the second nerve. Protect. However, if the tumor to sacrifice the intercostal, all fibrofatty tissues between the long thoracic nerve and thoracodorsal nerve or pedicle, which is called interneural tissue, should also be removed. Tissues lateral to the thoracodorsal pedicle harboring lateral axillary nodes should also be removed. So this is how the axilla looks in post of dissection. Several structures have been marked out. You can see in this real-time picture, this is the intercostobrachial nerve, this is the axillary vein, this is the head end, this is the tail end, leg end. So this is the axillary vein in transverse disposition. This is the intercostobrachial nerve, thoracic nerve across the, then you find the angular vein going like this, the TDP. So, what is the inferior extent of dissection? Some say it is up to the angular vein, some say that it is at the apex of angle, which is formed by intersection of the latissimus dorsi and the serratus anterior, or where the latissimus dorsi intersects with the base of the triangle located at the angular vein. After level 1 nodes to are routinely. If level 3 are palpable or even level 2 are palpable, then level 3 nodes are also removed. Now, what are the techniques of removing level 2 and level 3? Either you do a Patty's method, in which the lateral border of pectoralis minor is divided from thoracoid process to clear the level 2 nodes. Level 3 is cleared subsequently, is removed. In Scanlon's method, pectoralis minor is incised, level 3 nodes are in Austin clause, you just retract the pectoralis minor muscle and you remove the level 1 and 2 nodes. Structures preserved, I have already told. Now when ALND is done along with standalone procedure, you have incision which is crease or along the skin crease just beneath the axilla beyond the hairline, like the border of the pectoralis major. By sharp dissection, you open the axillary fascia, enter the axilla, and do the same procedure as you do in ALND when it is done with mastectomy. Hemostasis, to do thorough washing and count the instruments, put in a suction drain, and do skin closure. If 10 or more nodes are identified on histopathological examination, then you say that adequate axillary lymph node dissection has been done. The patient may develop hemorrhage, infection, seroma, stiffness, frozen shoulder pain, reduced range of movements, lymphedema, that is collection of lymph in the lymphatic space of the arm and forearm, lymphadenitis and lymphangitis. And when there is prolonged lymphedema, especially in patients who have also received radiation, patient may develop angiosarcoma, or that is also syndrome. Then there may be numbness and paresthesia along the area of distribution of nerves that may have been cut during the of the arm. Then if you damage the long thoracic wing scapula, this I've already told, if then LD muscle atrophy occurs, and then there is problem of climbing, or in the village areas people take out water from the whales by using buckets system, so they can't pull on the thread on the pulley system if the LD muscle is weakened. Now coming to lumpectomy, again you can offer lumpectomy to a patient if the tumor is less than 4 centimeters, tumor, not a multicentric disease, if the tumor breast ratio is good. Tumor may be big, but breast is also big, so that even after removal of tumor, the breast that is left behind is good and look good. Then, if there is sizing after neoadjuvant chemotherapy, if there is no contraindication of radiation, because BCT you must give radiation. So in a patient in whom you can't give radiation, you can't do BCT also. Then T4D tumors is an absolute contraindication. T4 tumors is a relative contraindication. If there is multicentric disease, extensive DCIS or microcalcifications, you have to go for. You cannot do BCS. Multicentric tumor precludes breast conservation and is a contraindication to it. So again, technique, lump localized by palpation, margins incision made over the lump. You may remove overlying skin or may not, depending on how close the tumor is to the skin. In breast, you put curved incision parallel to the nipple areola complex. In lower half, you may put radial incision or curved incision. Sometimes you incisions so that the incisions get hidden after recovery. So such incisions are either placed at the nipple areola junction, not at the nipple areola junction, at the areolocutaneous junction along the areolar margin. Then you may put at the inferior mammary crease or lateral mammary crease where the scars will be hidden. Then special incisions like undergoing oncoplastic techniques after lumpectomy. So this is how you put the incision in upper quadrant parallel and radial or circumareolar in the lower quadrant. Now again, steps. After incision is deepened, skin flaps are raised all around. By dissection all around, you go of the lump. By palpation, with an envelope of healthy breast tissue is removed to ensure clear margins. Cavity that is left behind is left as such and the skin is closed, that is called simple technique, or the cavity may be closed by opposing breast pillars, that is called level 1 oncoplasty, which again is beyond your scope, I think. If it is abutting or close to the pectoralis major muscle, a sleeve of the muscle is also removed along with the lump. Then after removal of the lump, ideally you should do a specimen mammogram or specimen ultrasound and ensure that the margins are away from the tumor margins are away from the specimen margin, so that you can ensure that you have taken a adequate. And then you may take cavity shapes of the tumor, you can take further shapes from each of the margins of the cavity that is left behind after tumor removal. Those are called cavity shapes. Tiger clips or any radio opaque marker, they are placed along the margins of the cavity so that the radiotherapist can identify the cavity for planning radiation after the wound has healed. Then you do when it is not placed routinely because that leads to puckering. Keep 24 hours. Oncoplasty, I've already told, sometimes in oncoplasty, you can mobilize breast tissue from other parts of the same breast. That is called volume replacement. Displacement is when you take tissue from LD muscle, tissue from other parts of the body and you put inside the breast. So there is another technique of lumpectomy that we used to do routinely, in which we would do ultrasound guided tumor excision. So this is not required in detail. We are skipping this. Now for wide local excision, enough. For invasive tumors, you do not 2 millimeter or 5 millimeter margin. Previously, they used to say you should take a millimeter margin. Now they say that when you take out the tumor and the pathologist puts an ink on the margin of the specimen, then if there is no tumor on that ink margin, that means you have taken adequate margin. So a minimum margin which ensures that there is no ink on the tumor on microscopy is enough. For DCIS, you have to take at least 2 millimeter microscopic margin, and for achieve microscopic margin negativity, you have to take a macroscopic margin of 1 to 2 centimeter during surgery. So these are some pictures of which have been done together through incision. This one also. This is a central core excision where the nipple areola complex has been removed for a central tumor and the rest of the breast has been conserved. So, tumor underlying nipple areola complex or involving nipple areola means that the whole breast has to be removed. This is also a central core excision. Then this patient underwent that tissue that was created after removal of tumor was filled up by LD muscle by taking. This is again a lumpectomy with. This is again a lumpectomy with LN that has been done by a round block technique for lumpectomy and LN separate incision. This is again LD muscle has been put in to cover a defect inside the breast after lumpectomy. And here you can see a deep inferior epigastric fasciocutaneous microvascular flap has been taken from the abdomen to fill up the defect in the breast. Now for impalpable breast lesion screening, sometimes patients will have no palpable lump, you will detect the lump. In that case, you cannot palpate. So on ultrasound guidance or mammographic guidance, you put in a wire inside the tumor. You put in a clip inside the tumor and you then target that clip by a wire. And then you remove certain amount of breast tissue centering around that wire and clip. And then you do a specimen mammography to see whether the clip has been removed in toto. You can see in this specimen mammography, first the specimen was taken out along with the wire, and mammography was done to see whether the wire is inside the tumor. So you know that the tumor bearing part has been removed. So this is a technique impalpable breast lesions. And there is another guided lumpectomies can be done. Instead of putting in a wire, you can put in 10 millimeter blood under image surrounding the tumor, and then it will form a clot and will render an impalpable tumor palpable, and you can remove that palpable part. So complications of lumpectomy: hematoma, wound infection, seroma, skin necrosis, margin positivity, recurrence or ugly scar. Now coming to lymphedema, we have told how lymphedema occurs after ALND, especially in patients who have undergone concomitant radiation. It is localized swelling of the arm caused by an abnormal accumulation of lymph due to partial or extirpation of which supply the upper limb. During surgery, you are supposed to remove the lymph nodes which are supplying the breast only, but sometimes we end up removing the lymph nodes which are draining the breast, the upper arm also, especially when you accidentally remove lymph nodes which are above the axillary vein. You have to avoid dissecting above the axillary vein. You should remain below the axillary vein. Okay, and it occurs more when ALND is done along with. So when do you say that lymphedema has occurred? When there is discrepancy of more than 2 centimeters in the circumference of both arms at a particular point, or a CC. To measure this volume, you can do this by water displacement technique by Archimedes principle. Now, this could be precipitated following surgery after minor trauma. Sometimes, patient undergoes surgery, after that she's cooking, and there may be some burn injury, or by pinprick bite. There is initially lymphangitis, which leads to lymphedema. Once it develops, it is incurable. So prevention is the key. Several options for management are available. However, it cannot be cured completely. It may culminate into elephantiasis or angiosarcoma. Prevention strategies: preoperative, you can start prophylactic injections of from prior to surgery or after surgery for breast cancer. You should not do IV access on the side of operation. You should give all chemotherapy, all adjuvant therapy, or fluids during and before surgery or after surgery on the opposite arm. Intraoperatively, axillary dissection should not remove nodes superior to the axillary vein. You should not dissect and remove the fascia covering the axillary vein. And nowadays, there is a procedure called lympha procedure, in which there lymphatics which supply the upper arm, and if any of those lymphatics are damaged, they are being anastomosed to a particular vein, lateral thoracic vein in the axilla lymphedema, by allowing the arm to drain into the lateral thoracic vein through this lymphatico-venous anastomosis. And then there's something called reverse sentinel mapping, which is not important for you. In this, what happens is you inject a dye in the arm, that dye goes up and you see which colored, and you do not remove those or damage. You try to save those colored lymphatics, because those are the lymphatics which are draining the arm. And then you may avoid ALND in patients who do not need it and just do sentinel lymph node biopsy. This reduces the incidence of lymphedema. In case of there is only 5 to 11% chance of occurrence of lymphedema, whereas in ALND there's 30%, 11 to 30% chance of occurrence of. What is sentinel lymph node? Sentinel means a guard, one who keeps watch. The first node in the region that drains the primary tumor is called the sentinel node. It may be a single node or maybe a group of nodes. So generally, you inject blue dye in the periareolar area at the areolocutaneous junction, half intradermal and half intrachimal, and then you massage, and you also inject in either the same quadrant of the breast bearing the tumor, and then massage, and you detect radioactivity in the axilla and also blue nodes. What the sentinel nodes are either the blue nodes or the hot nodes, or blue or hot, or after you find that some nodes are palpable. They may not hot or radioactive, but they are palpable. So such palpable nodes are nodes, or any node into which a colored lymphatic is seen to enter. So those are the sentinel nodes which you will remove. Generally, maximum 4 to 6 such nodes will be encountered. You should not remove more than 6 lymph nodes, sentinel nodes, because then you end up doing and it will not be considered as a sentinel lymph node biopsy anymore. Okay, but there is no criteria on as to how many minimum lymph nodes you have to remove. There only one lymph node which is fitting the criteria of sentinel lymph node. One node which is hot, palpable, or both hot or palpable, or both hot or blue, or having one colored lymphatic draining into it. So there may be only one such node. Sometimes even not even one node of such characteristic may. In case you have to abandon sentinel lymph node biopsy and do axillary lymph node dissection. However, node which is satisfying the definition of sentinel lymph node, is remove that node, you subject that node to either Kozel section or paraffin biopsy, and you see if it is positive or not. If it is positive for metastasis, you go in for a completion ALND. If it is negative, then you do not do anything else, and hence you can save the patient from developing lymphedema. There is another technique of using both fluorescence and blue dye to do sentinel lymph node biopsy, which I'm not going into the details. So this is using fluorescence along with blue node for SLNB. You can see the blue nodes and blue lymphatics in the axilla, which represent the sentinel nodes, which will be, and you remove only those nodes which are hot or blue or both hot or blue. You are not removing the other nodes in the axilla as part of sentinel lymph node biopsy. So post-operative exercises should be done. Again, this is another, coming to the other prevention strategies of lymphedema. Post-operative exercise should be done. Continue prophylaxis with benzathine penicillin 3 weekly for a year after surgery, and avoid pinprick, burn, minor trauma. Do not wear rings or glass bangles which may break and prick the forearm. Now, if lymphedema develops, how can you treat? You assess severity, do a lymphoscintigraphy, you control infection with antibiotics and dressing, antihistaminics for itching, then zinc containing lotions like lactocalamine, emollients like aloe vera to keep the area supple, long-term injection of benzathine penicillin, and reassurance. Then you have short stretch elastic stockinette or sleeve, class 3 stockings. Then you can have 6-layer or 4-layer bandaging, which is done to squeeze the lymphatic fluid back to the lymphatic basin in the scapula, and then in the interscapular area, and then drain it off. Then there's something called manual decongestive compression therapy using bandages. Then there is pneumatic compression device like this, in which the arm is inserted inside a bag, and then air is injected in a chamber which is outside the chamber containing the arm, and you increase the pressure so that there is pneumatic compression on the arm. And then finally you can do subcutaneous tunneling and put tubes in the subcutaneous tunnel extending from dorsum of the hand reaching up to the interscapular area. And then there's something called axillary sampling, in which you are not doing a formal ALND, neither do you stop at sentinel lymph node biopsy, but you remove 4 to 6 lymph nodes from the axilla by dependable boundaries, that is lymph below the intercostal medial to the lateral thoracic vein. In that area, you remove 4 to 6 lymph nodes, because anatomically about 98% of lymph nodes will be, 86% of lymph nodes will be encountered in that area. When you also remove lymph nodes above the intercostobrachial nerve but medial to the lateral thoracic vein, they cover about 98% of all lymph nodes. So you can remove only those nodes, about 4 to 6 of them, and then subject them to histopathological examination. That is called limited axillary sampling or anatomical, and you do that in areas where you do not have access to radioisotope injection for sentinel lymph node biopsy, or you do not have the facility of blue dye or fluorescence. So this brings us to the end of a basic discussion on breast cancer. I think if any of the long session, so if any of you has any question, you may ask me personally later on. So we will conclude the class. Can you hear me?
How to contact you, sir?
So we are concluding the class. If any of you has any question, you will contact me personally. I'll answer them. Okay. Hope the class was useful. It was supposed to be done in 2 classes, but then there was a mix up actually. I had to take the benign breast diseases classes. So I'll conclude the lecture here. If anybody has any queries, they may ask me personally, me, or by sending WhatsApp messages.
Okay, sir.